What is up, YouTube Boxing? It is your boy, KRod7435. I am back at it with another good video for y'all today. Let's talk about this potential matchup between Canelo Alvarez versus Kamaru Usman. Could this fight ever be a possibility? Um, Honestly, I think Canelo Alvarez is a force. Well, I think how everything is going now for Canelo Alvarez's career, he's a political force to be reckoned with, like whatever he does in boxing. Obviously, for me personally, like I don't really give two shits about Canelo, and I don't like Canelo. Everyone knows that. But the thing about Canelo Alvarez's career is that where he's at now, he has to fight the big fights that make the most sense. And to a financial standard, Canelo understands that his biggest fights are basically turning away from him very, very fast because the opportunities that he could have made with a guy like Jamal Charlo, that's not being made. A guy like David Benavidez, that fight isn't being made. Or taking a fight with Artur Beterbiev instead of going after Bivol, knowing that Beterbiev is a way tougher fight. That's obviously not being made. And even though for any of you Canelo Alvarez's dick riders that will try to say that, oh well, like Canelo fighting Bivol, he's going after legacy, right? If Canelo, beats Bivol and then beats Beterbiev, then like you have nothing else to say. Like you can't be saying that, Holmes. You can't be disrespecting Canelo. Well, here's the thing. If Canelo even gets undisputed in this, like in his second weight division, at what point will we want to see Canelo face the bigger premier level fights? Because at that point, I think it would be best for Canelo if Canelo really, really, really wants to make big, big time legacy, it would be best to beat up Andre, Charlo, Benavidez, and then go after Undisputed for 175. Because at least that way, if you could go for Undisputed and then, go back and forth with David Benavidez and Charlo and Andrade, let's just say Canelo wins every single fight. Out of all those fights, that would make a really, really good, premier level legacy. And I would be like, okay, I give Canelo Alvarez his credibility, and, that's something that I've been wanting to see out of Canelo for such a long time. But the problem is that Canelo is not showing that to me. He's not proving to the world why he is Canelo Alvarez. Because at one point you did have the opportunity to do that at 154. You did have the opportunity to do that at 160 pounds at the middleweight division. But you, out of all people, wanted to do it the evil way, to wait for David Benavidez to lose his belt off the scale for missing weight, to go swoop in, take his WBC belt away, and then go ahead and face Caleb Smith for the vacancy to unify the title. And then after that, you requested through the WBC's political order in which they voted to have Avni Yildirim, a man that never had fought in 2+ years, coming out of a long layoff, heading from 2019, leading into, I believe, 2021, if I'm not mistaken. That's when Canelo faced him. But yeah, I mean, Canelo Alvarez has easily shown to the world why, he is not the best fighter in the world. If anything, he's just another washed up version of Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. He's just like a more, slower version of him. He doesn't really have anything special out of him. I mean, granted, I'll give Canelo his credibility for him having good upper body movement when he presses you to the pocket. But at the end of the day, is there really anything spectacular out of Canelo Alvarez's skill set that makes anyone think that Canelo Alvarez is making you look like, he's like a big ass threat? And the answer is no, because it's showing within his movement of how he's been moving. The only toughest fights that I will say Canelo Alvarez gains my respect for will be a Caleb Plant victory, in which, he was losing that fight. He wasn't really winning. In which, actually, he almost lost on Patricia Morris Jarman's scorecard, which that was very surprising. 96-94. That's actually really good for Caleb Plant's, justice. But, yeah, I mean, if Plant didn't get knocked down twice and he actually, did what he had to do, I think Plant definitely would have given Canelo a better scorecard for him to be like, okay, well, I know that I did well, but even if Plant did get robbed out of the scorecards, I think Canelo understood that he knew that he wasn't winning that fight. But okay, yeah, congratulations, you beat Caleb Plant, a guy that wasn't staying switched on, and he was dominating you for the majority of the fight. Um, I say the other good victories that Canelo has had is, I will say, the Danny Jacobs and the Triple G fights, and I probably say the Erislandy Lara, in which a fight that he knew that he lost, so I will say that's a loss on his record. And I probably say the Austin Trout victory, a fight in which Austin Trout was coming back in the fight, and he was giving Canelo a shitload of problems. And that was a good fight while it lasted, but I mean, that was a good, decent victory. But ever since then, it's just like, everything that you see here off of his box rec, he's been, ducking and avoiding all the, dangerous, level opposition. Ever since Canelo had beat Gennady Golovkin, he was supposed to fight Charlo at this time frame back in 2018 when Charlo was his mandatory. And then Canelo just, quickly moves up to super middleweight, beats up Rocky Fielding, and then he goes right back down to middleweight for some weird reason, and then beats up Danny Jacobs, the unified middleweight champion, in which, I don't understand how Canelo Alvarez was able to just make weight at 160 and then go all the way up to 175 and then do the same thing to go back down to 168 and go for undisputed, and now here we are in Canelo's second possible undisputed light heavyweight run. So now, the thing about Kamaru Usman is that Kamaru Usman, he's a good fighter, but, that's the UFC. And Kamaru Usman has been talking his stuff to say that he wants to fight Canelo Alvarez, which is a very good call-out, and I'm not, against the call-out, but we have to be very realistic here that Canelo Alvarez, he's at a point in his career where after when it's all said and done in boxing, it's probably going to be fair to say that people will say Canelo Alvarez deserves to, retire from the sport. And if people want him to retire from the sport after he goes for undisputed, let's just say theoretically at 175, hold on, give me a second, then Canelo will gladly retire, at a very good young age, in which I believe he is 32, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, Canelo, he has plenty of time on his side left to get those good level premier fights in at 175, in which I will say that if Canelo is going to go for undisputed again at 175, I think it's best to see Canelo Alvarez go for the big fights for Charlo, Benavidez, Andrade, and, any other big level fight. Obviously, I like to see David Morrell in the mix with Canelo, but I think Canelo understands, what's at stake here. And I think him versus Kamaru Usman is a very good fight, and I'm definitely for it. I think him and Usman should definitely get it going. I don't see why that fight cannot be made, because what's happening right now between him and Bivol, I don't think that fight is going to be solidified. And I think based off of how everything has been shown, with that fight, is that Bivol, if he's not able to get, any justice through the WBA to make his title defense against Canelo, then that basically makes it a lot harder for Canelo to get undisputed. Or actually, if anything, if the WBA is going to relinquish his belt, now it makes me think that whoever's going to be number one mandatory for that belt, that's probably who Canelo's probably going to face. But then on top of that, it's probably also making me think that John Ryder, he'll probably be called up in the mix to fight Canelo because John Ryder, he's basically going to be that next European lamb sacrifice that Canelo is probably going to use to make himself more sustainable to basically get his opportunity to keep avoiding the tougher opposition. So I don't know. I think honestly, just how everything's going between Canelo's career and Usman's career, I think Usman and Canelo should be able to happen. UFC legends like Chael Sonnen try to say that Kamaru and Canelo can't happen simply because that these are two different promotional networks. But knowing that Canelo, he is a free agent, he can do whatever he wants. But it's like, I think from a political standpoint, Canelo knows like if he fights Usman, and let's just say Usman actually fucks around and actually hurts Canelo and makes this into like a high level action packed fight, that Canelo knows what's going to happen, then I think honestly that's going to be a really really difficult publicity stunt for Canelo to face against, in which I think Canelo and Usman is actually like a pretty good fight. At first, I thought Usman, would like seriously get knocked the fuck out really bad by Canelo, just simply because Canelo, he's a really good inside pressure fighter, but he's also calculated with it, and he fights very similar to Cesar Chavez Sr., where he does come into the mix, on the inside, and he forces a lot of counters with his upper body movement. So that's something that I'm a little bit curious about Usman. Is he's like, is he actually able to take those shots from Canelo? And I think, Usman, he's not going to let a guy like Canelo try to cheat him. Honestly, I would really hope for anybody that supports Kamaru Usman, including myself, is that, we push for the proper justice between him and Canelo. So that way, that could be like a good, even, fair fight. But on top of that, I also like to see, something, beyond the limits of probably seeing this fight probably go 12 rounds. I think it's fair to say, if we really want this fight to be made, it should be a 12 rounder. And I think it should definitely be made for, definitely has to be 8-ounce gloves, depending on what the teams want. But if this fight is going to be a really big mega fight, I think the UFC and Showtime need to come together, and then it could be promoted as a cross-promotional platform fight where Canelo and Usman could basically fight, fight each other on multiple networks, and then that'll actually be a really, really good action-packed, level bout. So, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts. I mean, I like me personally, like I'm not against Usman fighting Canelo, but at the end of the day, that the business has to make sense. But I think Canelo, he pretty much shows to the world, like, if he, fights Usman and Usman comes around and, like, he comes out of this fight and actually just hurts Canelo and tries to pound on him and actually have some high level display of high level boxing, boxing IQ, then I think Canelo knows what's up with Usman, because otherwise he would have fought Usman right away when Usman was calling Canelo out from the beginning. But now that this controversy is now getting a lot bigger to the public, I think Canelo is now starting to entertain the fight more, because he's now understanding what the ramifications of this fight will be. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Canelo versus Usman is a good pay-per-view level fight? And then on top of that, Do you think Usman gains a lot of traction if he were to beat Canelo? Because if this is going to be like a real actual fight, then records are definitely going to be on the line. But I think honestly, like, if it's just going to be like your typical exhibition type of fight, then I understand that part. I think Canelo understands that, he doesn't have to do that much. But I mean, if this is going to be like where records are actually on, like, on the line, and I think legacy is on the line, in which Canelo, he's still going to treat it as a legacy driven fight because he's not going to let no Usman try to dog walk him and try to hurt him. But I think if both fighters are actually primed and ready, I think Canelo, he's not going to let Usman try to hurt him and try to give him, all these, extra, open looks. But I mean, who knows? Because if Usman, if he has that good power translated into boxing, where he's able to hurt Canelo and he's able to find those weaknesses that Canelo has, I think Usman could really fuck around and stop him. So I don't know, man. I think honestly, that's a true 50-50 fight. So, all right, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think and drop your comments and drop your thoughts, like, below to let me know how you think this fight will go down. So, I'll see you guys later. Peace out. Bye.